want to thank everyone for joining us today for our last information session for Going Pro Talent Fund FY24 Cycle 1. That is a mouthful. The guy's doing 2 cycles this year. Before we get started here, just to let everyone know, we will be recording this session. In case I do an exceptionally good job, then we may post it on the website for further information. And if I don't, you'll never see it again. Other than that, we will be hearing from our CEO today, Greg Petoniak. He'll be presenting on SEMCA and kind of a brief history and overview of us as an organization. And then he'll be handing it off to Colleen Mallory, our business services manager, who will be going over business services and all that we have to offer besides our Going Pro Talent Fund. So to kick it off, I will hand it over to Greg.
Well, thank you, Trevor, and good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for joining us on this beautiful Friday afternoon. And I'm certain you will find it worth your while to have joined us, because this is a very helpful program for many businesses. So again, I'm Greg Petoniak, I'm the CEO for SEMCA Michigan Works. And SEMCA is a 501c3 nonprofit established in 1996. And we've been a pretty significant leader in workforce and talent development programs for almost 3 decades. We are created and led by your community and business leadership. What do I mean by that? So our governing board is a formal partnership under law of the Conference of Western Wayne, the Downriver Community Conference, the Conference of Eastern Wayne, and the counties of Monroe and Wayne County. That board appoints a workforce development board who, by requirements of federal rules, is a majority private sector membership. And I note that to say to you that we benefit from the perspective of those private sector board members in helping us assist you. We operate 6 Michigan Works American Job Centers throughout the region. That when you go to your website, you can find if you want to seek service directly there in any fashion. And I want to point out with pride that we are accredited by the National Council on Accreditation. That is a voluntary accreditation process we undertake as part of our commitment to constant improvement with administrative practices and updating our policies and administrative strategies. So we're very proud of that. Every 3 years, we also go through a strategic planning process with our board of directors, our staff, our partners. And on this slide, you can see our mission and vision statement. And 2 key words that I would emphasize in the context of those statements is that we are committed to partnerships and we are committed to innovation to serve you. So who do we serve? Well, yes, we serve job seekers. We do our best to help them find jobs, but more importantly, to pursue a career pathway that might include some training support to obtain a credential or a degree in a high demand occupation. We also, equally important to us, our customers are the employers, where we can assist you again with recruitment and hiring, among other things, as well as Going Pro Talent Fund funds for, training your incumbent workers. And of course, that benefits your employees. We can help them in other ways besides training. And again, Colleen will share more information on her business services with you in a few minutes. So before I turn it over to Colleen, I just want to know that we are constantly evolving and adapting to the new economy to serve your interests. In recent years, we've had a greater commitment to career pathways and awareness for youth and adults. We limit our training funding to achieving credentials in high demand occupations only. And we have a greater commitment than ever to developing work-based learning options, including apprenticeships, to help you maximize the labor pool that you can access for your critical positions. Thank you again for joining us. And let me just emphasize to you that the Going Pro Talent Fund is a state of Michigan program funded with state of Michigan general fund dollars. and it enjoys strong bipartisan support with both Republican and Democrat governors and legislators because of its great value to our business community, our workers, as well as our state's economy. All right, I'll turn it over to Colleen Mallory, Workforce Program Manager, to continue with an overview of our business services. Thank you again.
Great, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. So in addition to the Going Pro Talent Fund, our business services team offer employers a variety of services that may be beneficial to you with your recruiting needs or your talent development needs. So for talent recruitment, we can offer any sort of labor market information. If you want to see what wages are prevailing in those occupations in your area, we can do that. We can help then draft job descriptions for you for those job postings. We can put them on the Michigan Talent Connect website. It's similar to a career builder or monster.com. It's for job postings as well as for employers to search for candidates. It's all free of charge, prepaid by tax dollars. And then we also take those job postings and promote them to our social media networks. We distribute them to our job seeker staff that work directly with our job seekers that come into our American Job Centers, and also our other partners that we network with throughout our region. We can host virtual job fairs. We are currently do them on a quarterly basis. And in August, we had one of the third largest virtual job fairs in the state of Michigan. So they were, I think we had over 250 job seekers attend and 25 employers. So it was very fruitful and well attended. In addition, though, we can host in-person job fairs now at our local American Job Centers. We can help pre-screen applicants. You can use our space at our American Job Centers for not only recruiting events, but for onboarding, testing, anything else that you need to help with bringing your talent in and getting them onboarded. We also have access to no cost fidelity bonding. Those are for our returning citizens, people who may be justice involved, and you just want a little extra reinsurance because we have a need for employees from anywhere, and so that's a great population to tap into. For talent development, in addition to offering the Going Pro Talent Fund program, we can assist you with our federal dollars for training new hires with on-the-job training or upskilling current employees. And we also offer funding for expanding or developing USDOL registered apprenticeship programs. We have a lot of opportunities right now, grants that we received to help offset those costs of either starting an apprenticeship program or offset the cost of the classroom training or the on-the-job learning that's required for those programs. So if you have any or you're interested in starting an apprenticeship program at your organization, please feel free to let us know. For retaining talent, we also have what's called the Business Resource Network. It's a group of employers that get together, and if they have a need to retain their talent, as talent is scarce nowadays, employers want to hold on to those good workers. And so this network can help them overcome barriers to getting to work, whether it's childcare, transportation, housing. This program helps go right into the company and work directly with your current employees to help overcome those obstacles. And let's see. So that's the end of mine. What we'll do, if you're interested in any of the items that I spoke about, we have a feedback form that we'd ask you to complete after Trevor's presentation. I put a link in the chat, and then there'll be some check boxes of different programs that we offer to employers outside of the Talent Fund. So if you're interested in any of those, please check those boxes. And one of our business services representatives will connect with you to review anything and how we can best help meet your needs. All right, great, thanks. All right, Trevor, over to you.
Thank you, Colleen. I don't think I introduced myself maybe at the beginning, but my name is Trevor Verrier. I am the Workforce Associate Project Manager and the key contact for Going Pro Talent Fund. So we will jump right in here. So the Going Pro Talent Fund, actually, let me back up. As we go, your questions may pop up. We will stop periodically throughout the presentation to take those questions. If you think of something as I'm talking, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll get to that when we stop. You can also click the raise your hand button towards the top of the screen there. And then when we get to the questions, you can unmute and ask your question. So the Going Pro Talent Fund. The purpose is to provide competitive awards to employers to assist in the training, development, and retention of your current and new employees. It helps to ensure that Michigan's employers have the talent they need to compete and grow, and the individuals have the skills they need for the in-demand jobs within our state right now. It is available to private sector employers in Michigan. This is a competitive award, so you are competing against employers from across the state of Michigan. And to qualify for or be eligible, you need to apply within the application window. This is a state grant. They are very hard and fast on their deadlines. So if you don't get that application submitted within the application window, you will miss out on this cycle, but you will be able to apply next cycle. As we go, you will notice some blue asterisks. These are things that are new this year for FY24, and I will call those out and explain those more. So the Going Pro Talent Fund is designed to create public-private partnerships with businesses to develop training models that adapt in real time with the changing employer demand. All training must be completed within 1 year from the award date and lead to credential skill that is transferable and recognized by the industry. So that training that you will be doing needs to upskill your employees, make them more desirable. If you, for some reason, had to let them go, that the training they received with you would then help them become employed quickly. And you also need to complete that training within 1 year from the award date. Once that 1 year ends, any training that happens after that you had planned cannot be reimbursed. You have to do it all within the 1 year award period. Employers who request funding must actively participate in the development of your training plan. Us at SEMCA, we're here to help you with it, but it must be led by you, myself, and your business services rep. We'll gladly help you develop your training plan and guide you along the way. New jobs created as a result of the Going Pro Talent Fund. You should fill those vacancies with the assistance of your local Michigan Works agency. There's also some incentives to fill those vacancies with targeted populations, people from targeted populations, which we will dive into a little more later on what those incentives are and what those targeted populations are. To be an eligible employer, you need to be a non-government, private sector, for-profit or nonprofit organization or company. The employer, must have a need for skill enhancement, including apprenticeship program or advanced tech programs for current employees or new employees. You must have a Michigan presence. You cannot be, solely outside of Michigan, training your employees using Going Pro Talent Fund. You need to have a Michigan presence doing work in Michigan. You must be in compliance with all federal and state tax obligations. This, if you are not in compliance, that doesn't bar you from applying or being awarded. If you are awarded, you will have a period to rectify those tax obligations, and then those funds will be released for you to be able to use if you are awarded. You must be willing to participate under the project's eligibility and parameter guidelines, which are spelled out in more detail in our employer process guide, which we will hopefully be getting to you soon. We are waiting on the state to finalize that document so that we can then share it publicly with you. But there's far more information in that employer process guide than what I will be able to dive into today. So don't worry, this is just an overview, give you the basics, and then that employer process guide will really dive into the details. Public institutions or entities are not eligible to apply, so no quasi-public private entities, even if they are a 501c3. So things such as county road commissions, municipality-owned utilities, community mental health authorities, and organizations like those. So the eligible employees that you can train with this grant would be your current employees, your incumbent employees. Those are people that are on your payroll at the time of application. You can train new hire employees with this, so people that you plan on hiring throughout that 1 year period application. A new hire is defined as someone who was hired 30 days prior to, on, or after the award date. So right now, the tentative award date for FY24 cycle 1 is January 1. So someone who was hired December 1 would qualify as a new hired employee. They must be a permanent full-time employee for the sake of the grant. Full-time is considered 32 hours a week or more. You must pay all applicable taxes for those employees in Michigan. Doesn't matter where they live. So being in Southeast Michigan, right, you may have employees commuting up from Ohio. As long as you are paying all applicable Michigan taxes for that employee, they are eligible to be trained on this grant. They need to be 18 years of age or older, U.S. citizen or legally authorized to work in the U.S. And as mentioned, they need to be full-time, so no seasonal or part-time employees, no 1099 employees or employees that are contracted through a temp agency. They need to be employees on your payroll. Pause here for a second. Any questions? Don't see any hands or any questions in the chat. All right, carry on. So training. Funding should be utilized for short-term training. So this is training that would not exceed more than 6 months in duration. So no trainings that are, year-long trainings. They need to be short-term trainings that then result in a credential or a certification. All classroom or customized training and apprenticeship training must be done, as I said, within that 1 year time frame. So from January 1 to December 31st. New employee on-the-job training, including the 90-day post-retention period, must be completed within that 1 year. So if you have employees doing on-the-job training, once they finish those on-the-job hours, you then need to retain them for 90 days to get a full reimbursement. So that all that needs to be completed before December 31st. So eligible training providers would be Michigan community colleges and universities, private training providers that can do just-in-time accelerated learning. Registered USDOL, Department of Labor Joint Apprenticeship Training Centers are eligible. Vendors providing training and operation of equipment or systems for which they are the provider. So if you have software or equipment from a company that they are the only ones that can do the training for, they are eligible training providers as far as the grant is concerned. You, the employer, are only an eligible training provider for on-the-job training, and then also only if your processes or what you produce is exclusive in nature and proprietary. So if you produce a widget that no one else knows how to produce and you have an exclusive process, you then would be able to be the eligible training provider for that. But if there's someone else within the state of Michigan or around the country that offers training on your process or product or what you do, then you would have to seek training through those other training providers. Proprietary schools is licensed in the state of Michigan are eligible. Preference is to have all training occur in Michigan. However, as I kind of just mentioned, if the process or what you do, the only training available is outside of the state of Michigan, that would be allowable. You just need to provide some documented need and rationale for why you have to go out of state for that training. So we do have 3 types of training that are eligible on the Going Pro Talent Fund. First type of training is classroom and customized training. This can be used for current or new employees, must lead to a credential or skill that is transferable. So, heaven forbid you have to let your employees go, that they would be able to then become gainfully employed in a quick time frame. Needs to be conducted by a third party or unless it's exclusive in nature, like I just mentioned. The training may take place at you, the employer, or at the training provider. So you can bring in the training provider to your company to do the training. May take place online, but you need to provide rationale for support why you need to do online training. And then that online training also needs to have an instructor-led portion of the class. It cannot be a pre-recorded, self-paced online training. It needs to be instructor-led, have a live portion. So here are some list of examples of eligible training. This is not an exhaustive list of everything that is eligible. This is a guide of the type of classes that would be eligible for training under the Going Pro Talent Grant. So things like welding class, these are kind of, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Those skilled trades training jobs are very easy to, qualify under the grant. Things like Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma are actually eligible as well. And then obviously, use this as a guide. If you have something that you're kind of on the fence, like is it eligible, is it not eligible? I am here to answer those questions and help you sort that out, along with your business services rep. They'll help you figure out if a course is eligible or not. Here's some examples of ineligible trainings. One of the things I see every cycle is soft skills. Soft skills are not eligible. There's always several employers that have put soft skills on there, like conflict resolution or team building. Those types of courses are not eligible, unfortunately. Second type of training is on-the-job training. So this is for individuals hired 30 days prior to, on, or after the award date. So this is those new hires. If an individual was hired within 30 days prior to the award, the training cannot be started until the actual award date. So if you hired someone December 1, you can't start that on-the-job training until January 1, when the award training period starts. On-the-job training should be work-based learning, and training should be conducted at the workplace. Training a new hire to obtain skills to become proficient in a new job. This should not be used for low-wage, high-turnover occupations. Training, as I mentioned, is conducted at the work site. And to be fully reimbursed for that on-the-job training, you need to retain those new hires for 90 days post-completion of the on-the-job training. But we understand, things happen, an employee may leave for somewhere else, or you may have to let them go. So you're not just out those dollars. You do have the opportunity to be reimbursed in 3 different tiers. So you get 50% reimbursement if the training was retained for 30 days after training, 75% reimbursement if the employee was retained for 60 days, and then 100% if they were retained for 90 days following the training. The third type of training is apprenticeships. All apprentices are eligible for training funding. So this is your first year apprentice through completion of their apprenticeship program. An apprentice may be a current or a new hire employee. Training for apprentices may be classroom training, on-the-job training only, or you can do a combination of classroom and on-the-job training. So you can kind of split that there. USDOL registered apprenticeship retention period. So this is a bit of an exception for apprenticeships only. So that retention period actually may start at the beginning of OJT or related training instruction. And so that classroom, whichever comes first. So you don't have to wait until the OJT is complete to start retention. With apprentices, you can start that retention period as soon as they start the on-the-job training. There is another exception here for apprenticeship training. It is acceptable that it is all 100% online, as long as it is a part of a USDOL approved curriculum. If you are training apprentices on the grant, you will need to provide apprentices' names for RAPIDS verification that we then send off to the state, and they verify that your employees are indeed USDOL registered apprentices within the RAPIDS system. You do need to provide a letter attesting that you have an active USDOL apprenticeship and for which occupations you have that apprenticeship in. Also a part of apprenticeship training this year, you will have to provide we will give you a kind of a personal identification form for apprentices. Apprentices will have to be entered in the OSMIS system this year to be eligible for reimbursement. They have not given us details on what exactly are the data points they need to collect on each apprentice. As soon as we have that information, which should be in the employer process guide, we will get that out to you. But that is something in addition. If you're training apprentices, you will have to provide some more information on them to be entered into OSMIS. Training funds, so allowable expenditures under Going Pro Talent Fund. So this would be like the actual cost of the classroom training, wage reimbursement for the on-the-job training, USDOL registered apprenticeship training, So those classroom only training, on-the-job training, or classroom and on-the-job training. Things that you cannot use the Going Pro Talent Fund for would be for the purchase of tools or equipment, licensing fees, testing fees, curriculum development, travel cost of trainees, online training subscriptions. So the only thing that is eligible is those costs that are directly related to the actual training. So the cost of those classroom training or that wage reimbursement for on-the-job training. So for classroom training, each trainee should not exceed more than $2,000 per trainee. That is the cap for trainees. New hire on-the-job training and classroom training should not exceed $2,000 per trainee. USDL registered apprenticeships, they do have a cap of $3,500 per trainee, which is nice, and you can split that between on-the-job and classroom training. Doesn't have to be one or the other. So here are those targeted populations, which you can receive an incentive for if you hire from them. For your new hires, you would get an extra $500 for hiring someone from one of these targeted populations. You cannot stack those incentives. So if you hire someone who is a veteran and an older worker, you would only get $500. You do have the opportunity to get a $1,000 incentive if you hire someone who completes a high school diploma or equivalency while they're employed with you. We'll take a pause here for any questions. I don't see any in the chat. We will keep moving along. So with any government grant, there are rules and responsibilities and requirements. So you, the employer, you must be actively involved in the planning and designing of your training project. And as mentioned, us here at SEMCA are here to help you with that planning and design of your training project. Your BSR will be your main contact point and should be able to help you on anything you need there. You need to really drill down into your training plan, include realistic expectations. There is a cap of dollars you can request, which is $500,000, which may, kind of sound enticing. You're like, oh, we can apply for that $500,000, but really drill down into that. Like, can you really complete that $500,000 worth of training within that 1-year time period, considering all of your production needs and other business needs? Yeah, because if you request $500,000 and you end up only using, $10,000, $50,000 worth of that award that you were given, that could then reflect on you if you go to apply again in the future. The state could take that into consideration if they see, oh, they applied for 500,000, but we're only able to use 10,000. They want to spread those dollars as much as possible around the state to employers that are going to fully utilize them in training Michigan employees. The talent fund should not be utilized for those low wage, high turnover occupations. It is the expectation that training leads to higher skills, which would result in higher wages. If you are awarded, you will sign a contract/training agreement with us, the Michigan Works Agency, outlining those roles and responsibilities and timeframes as far as Going Pro Talent Project is concerned. At the completion of training, of all training, you will need to provide an impact story of the training, which will be done online. It's an online form that we'll send to you with drop downs and just boxes to fill out. Commit to the retention of those employees at the completion of training. You will need to provide wage information prior to training, post-training, and 6 months post-training. So this process could, depending on how you build your training plan and how quickly you get the trainings done, this process could take anywhere from, about 7 months to a year and a half. You need to provide required documentation for reimbursement, which we'll go over later. Provide a projected employer contribution on the application. And then once your award period is finished, you will revise that employer contribution if you, contributed more in some ways, or maybe you reduced your employer contribution because you weren't able to contribute as much. You will need to close out the prior year award before receiving an award for FY24. So if you are an employer who applied in FY23, cycle 1 or cycle 2, you do have until January 31st to close out your FY23 award to be eligible for an FY24 award. So you can still apply, but as long as you're planning to have your FY23 award closed out and completed by January 31st, I would encourage you to apply. And then if you do get it closed out by January 31st and you're awarded, there will be no issue with you being awarded those funds. You need to commit to using Michigan Works and the Pure Michigan Talent Connect to recruit and fill open positions. So here's a kind of brief overview of the application process. Once we are done here and you're still interested in the Going Pro Talent Fund, I haven't scared you away. You will do a fact-finding meeting with a business service representative. They will meet with you, discuss kind of in more detail Going Pro Talent Fund, make sure that this is a good fit for your training needs. And if it is, they will then provide you with a link to an online application, which is then completed by you. Right now, the application period, it is tentative, as we have not received that official employer process guide yet. But the application should open on October 9th and close on October 27th. The training period then would also start on January 1st, 2024 and go all the way to December 31st, 2024. Once your application is submitted, the state will then review and score all the applications until funds are exhausted. Completion of your application does not guarantee funding. As I mentioned, this is a competitive grant and you are competing against employers from all around the state. So some new things for FY24, they are bringing back a tiered scoring system for dollar amount requested. So if you are requesting a large dollar amount, the lower amount of points you get. The smaller dollar amount you request, a higher amount of points that you can be awarded. This is to encourage, kind of spread those dollars out, make sure that as many employers and employees around the state of Michigan are getting the training that they need. We don't necessarily want, several large employers, taking all the funding, training just their people. We want to, be able to get this to small businesses along with those larger businesses. And that scoring criteria will be spelled out in the employer process guide. If I remember correctly, they mentioned, I believe, 220,000 and above would be 0 points, and 60,000 and under would be 6 points. And that is tentative, don't quote me on that, but that will be spelled out in the employer process guide. Applications that include training directly applicable to infrastructure, electric vehicle, or mobility, you have an opportunity to score points there if your business falls within one of those categories. They're also giving special allowance for labor market participation policies of you, the employer. So if you offer predictive scheduling to your employees, which is defined as you give your employees a schedule 14 days in advance, that would score you points. If you have taken actions to reduce transportation barriers for your employees in training, that will give you points. And if you, the employer, help to improve access to affordable and reliable childcare for your employees, that would also score you points. If you fall into one of these business sectors, a high priority sector, you will score points there. This year, they added infrastructure as one of the high priority sectors. There's also some diversity, equity, and inclusion points you can score. So this would be things like if you are a minority-owned business, a woman-owned business, a business owned by someone with a disability. One of the main areas where most people who are scoring points in the DEI section are is if your business is located in a economically disadvantaged area, that will score you points. And we have a map and a way for you to check to see if your business falls within that. In that employer process guide, it spells out all these categories and all the requirements and how to verify if you are scoring points in these areas. So don't worry, that is all spelled out in more detail. You will get points if you have a US Dual registered apprenticeship. And as mentioned, You will need to provide information on those apprentices to be registered in the OSMIS system, to get reimbursement for those and to score points for those employees. You can score points for college credit, and this year they added a third-party training provider. So that is not just a broad, every third-party training provider. There is a much more detailed definition that will come out in the process guide, but this will be organizations, like kind of professional organizations that offer certifications through public regulated agencies, not just any third-party training provider. That is spelled out in more detail in the process guide. This year they changed the points for average wage to median wage, so that middle employee on your training plan, if the median wage is equal to or greater than your regional median wage, so by county, you will score points there. And then if for some reason a lot of employers are tying on points, they have some tiebreaker categories. So if you have fewer than 100 employees, you will get points. 50% or more of your employees on your training plan are new hires, you get points. If your funding request is under 50,000, you would score tiebreaker points, and then you get more tiebreaker points if you do have the USDOL registered apprenticeship. So if you are approved, you decide you want to move forward with Going Pro Talent Fund, the BSR will provide you with a link to this web page here and bring you to this landing page. You will need to either sign in if you already have a WeBlooms account, or create a new login. If you do have a Pure Michigan Talent Connect account, that login should work here. If you do not, you can always come over here, click sign up today, register yourself as a new user. Once you are registered and you have an account, you enter in, you will see a page that looks like this. You will want to start a new authorization request for an application. So you'll come in, click new authorization request. Fill out all the applicable fields and drop downs. Make sure you enter the name you want displayed publicly in doing business as, so that if you are awarded, this is the name that the state would publish. Please make sure you select a new authorization request. Do not submit existing. We want to select a new authorization request. Select the Michigan Works agency you are working with. One of the common mistakes that I've come across is there is Southeast Michigan Works, and then we are Southeast Michigan Community Alliance Michigan Works, SEMCA. Please make sure you're selecting SEMCA and not Southeast, or else we will not see your application. So you need to select SEMCA as your Michigan Works agency. If you're already working with a business service representative, enter their information here. Then carry on, fill out all the various drop downs. In here, you'll enter if you have any Michigan State tax obligations. And as mentioned before, this doesn't bar you from applying for the Going Pro Talent Fund. If you are awarded, you will have, I believe it is 60 days to rectify those tax obligations, and then your funds will be released. Please put the primary contact for you, the employer, so the person who's going to be the point person taking care of your Going Pro Talent Fund award. And then the tentative training date, you would enter January 1, 2024 to December 31st, 2024. We will pause here for any questions. All right, I don't see any questions or any hands raised. We'll keep going. I'm either really confusing you guys or doing an adequate job. So here's a brief overview of once you've gone in, you've done your authorization, you've been approved for an application. This is a brief kind of rundown of the actual application process and building out your training plan. So first you would select the type of training provider you'd be using. This would be, like university, third-party training provider, things like that. You would then enter the name of that training provider. If you are doing OJT, you, the employer, would be the training provider. After you've done your training provider, you would then enter the training course name and the cost per trainee. This would be including OJT for new hires. You do not have to put specific dates for training, which is nice. So you don't have to, enter the training, say you're doing it from March to May, and then that class gets canceled or moved, and then you got to go back in and do a modification. So you're no longer requiring dates to reduce the amount of modifications that need to be done. Allows you a lot of flexibility as the employer, a lot less legwork on your end and our end. You would then, after entering the training course, enter the current number of employees for that training course, enter the number of new employees for that training course. And then for apprentices, you do that same process and enter the number of hours for on-the-job training as well. So now we'll kind of actually look at what the application looks like, that process I just described. So here you would come to that type of training provider, drop down, you select what type of training provider you're using, enter the name of the training provider, city, state, and then hit add. And you will do this as many times as necessary, adding all the training providers that you're going to be using before you move on. Once you're done adding all your training providers you're going to be using, save and continue. Then here you'll start to build out those training courses. So from all those training providers you just created, click this, a drop down of all those training providers will pop up. Select your training provider, enter the name of the course you will be doing. You're going to select the training types, whether it is, classroom or customized training or on the job training. So if it was on the job training, you would select you as the employer. Credential earned from that training, so certificate, if it's a college credit class, college credit, where that training is being delivered. And then for that training course, you would enter the number of new hires taking that training course and the number of current employees taking that training course, and then enter the cost per trainee for that training course. So not the, maybe the training provider has given you a total number for an invoice for how many, that training. Break it down into cost per trainee. Please remember, when entering your cost per person, the training cost per person must represent the exact cost. So if your training is, $5,000 per trainee, the Going Pro Talent Fund will only reimburse up to $2,000 per trainee. So only enter 2,000 here if is above that per person cap. So once you've gone through, so you will do this as many times as necessary as well for all those training courses. And then once you've done that, you'll move on. And here you'll just be breaking down the actual number of trainees on your training plan. So enter the total number of new hires you'll be training, total number of current employees you'll be training. And then the rest of these categories are a breakdown of these first two categories. So if you have new hires that are also apprentices, enter that number here. Same for current. If you have current employees that are apprentices, enter that number here. Total number of new hires that enter, they'll be earning college credit, or current employees will be earning college credit, enter those numbers in here. You will enter the average wage of your hourly employees, and then you'll also need to enter that median wage, which there'll be another category here yet. So in this section, you will want to enter the reimbursement amount requested for each type of trainee. So you will create a new entry for trainees of the same type who are requesting different reimbursement amounts. So in my example here, so you would create an entry for 10 current employees who are being reimbursed at $1,000, and then create a second entry for 5 current employees who'd be reimbursed at $2,000. So you are grouping employees by dollar amount. So you select current employee and you have 10 employees doing $575 worth of training. 10, 575. You have 3 at 600. You do 3 current employees at 600. So you're just breaking down your application and grouping, current or new employees by dollar amount per employee. And then if you have filled everything out correctly, these 2 numbers should match. If they don't match, it's not the end of the world. We are here to help you figure it out, where something went wrong. Business services rep should be able to help you. I will be able to help you. We will also provide you with a training plan template worksheet. I have found this training plan template worksheet is very, very helpful. One, for building out your training plan, keeping all your numbers straight. And then it's also very helpful for troubleshooting if these numbers don't match up, especially on our end. If you need us to help you, having that training plan for us to look at is going to help us figure out where the numbers went wrong. Usually, when these numbers don't match up, the issue is usually on this page here, the reimbursement details. Some employers usually group the employees wrong by training dollars, and that's why it doesn't match up. Or sometimes it is the employer is trying to request more than the dollar cap. So $3,500 for apprentices or $200 for non-apprentice employees, or $2,000, sorry. So once you've completed that part of the application, this is where you would then enter your employer contribution amount. So employer contribution can be a whole bunch of things you can add into that calculation. So this would be projected wages. So if you're paying your employees while they're in training, that is something you can count as an employer contribution. If that course costs more than that $2,000 per trainee or $3,500 per trainee, those extra dollars above and beyond what we can reimburse, those are dollars you can count towards your employer contribution. If you're reimbursing for travel costs for your employees, supportive services to your employees, even overhead or administrative costs, these are all things that you can add into your employer contribution amount. There is no minimum requirement for an employer contribution. We want to see that the employer has an invested interest in training your employees, and that this isn't just a grab for dollars, that you are invested in upskilling your employees. Now we'll take a pause here. Any questions? I don't see any questions in the chat. No hands raised. We're getting close to time here. I'll keep it moving. So at the completion of training, to get reimbursed, you will need to submit a copy of the invoice from the training provider. This must show the name of the training, cost of that training. You will need documentation of training completion. So if it was a college course, a transcript with grades on there is what we'll need. If it's just a certificate course, we will need that copy of the credential or completion certificate. We will then also need a company invoice to us, SEMCA. So this would be an invoice from you, the employer, to us, SEMCA, for that dollar amount you're requesting reimbursement for. We will also provide you with a form, a payment request form, which you will then fill out, which would match your company invoice dollar amount. And then you will also have to submit a training verification. This is at the completion of all your training at the end of the year, another spreadsheet that we'll send you that you enter the employees' names, wage. This is that pre-training, post-training, and 6 months post-training. So we'll send that to you at the beginning of training. We'll send it to you after you're done at training at the end of the year, and then we'll send it out to you again 6 months post-training for you to update to see if those, those employees have increased in wages or not. So similar to your current or new hire employees, apprenticeship employees, you would have the same documents you would need to submit. The only difference for on-the-job training reimbursement is you would need to submit a company payroll register query, or a screenshot from your payroll system showing the name of the employee, the hourly wage, the date, or the termination date if the employee left or if they were fired. We want to capture, see that they are indeed a new hire, that they qualify. They were hired within that, 30 days start or pre-training, or they were hired during, during that 1 year training period. And then we also want to make sure that they were retained for those 90 days to qualify for reimbursement. So that screenshot or payroll system would also need to be, time stamped for that 90 days post-training. And then along with that, for on-the-job training, right, you have that company invoice again, same thing, and the payment request form that we would provide to you as well. So at the completion of all training, we will need you to fill out an impact story. This is just an online form that we will send you a link to. Go through that form. There's drop-downs boxes to fill out where you'll kind of describe your training project, business or trainee quotes that you gathered during your training period. Any pictures you may have would be great. Outcomes from your training, number of new hires post-training, number of jobs created as backfill because of the Going Pro Talent Fund, any business growth that has happened because of the Going Pro Talent Fund, and any positive impact on your employees. And that is submitted online. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, I had a question. So when we're talking about the payroll stuff to kind of prove that there was an increase in wages, is there a specific requirement in increased wages, or just any sort of increased like hourly rate or something like that?
Yes. So you're talking about for the verification form?
Correct.
Yes. There's no payroll proof required for increased wages. We would just send you that verification form. You would pull that information from your system, enter it on the spreadsheet. There's no necessary backup for that. Where we do need the payroll verification is only for that verification of new hires. That's showing us,
okay.
Yep.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, no problem. And yeah, and there is no dollar amount or percent increase that is required. We do have, I think I have a question here from Kelly. It says, do we know when the state will announce the actual application date instead of the current tentative dates? I have that same question. They have said any day now. So hopefully soon, within the next few weeks. It is not out of the ordinary for the state to, kind of give us the final details very close to those tentative start dates. So I know it can be frustrating, but hang in there with us. We will get you that information as soon as it hits my email. All right, I don't see any more questions. I will keep moving. So the next steps. So if you are still interested in Going Pro Talent Fund, or if you were interested in any of those business services that Colleen mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, please complete that feedback form, letting us know how I did. If you are interested in the Going Pro Talent Fund, or if those other business services sounded interesting, or you want to know more about our business services. Fill that out. We will get you in contact with the right people to keep this process rolling. Then once you fill that out, I'll get you connected with a business services rep who will do your fact finding, which is a required part of the process. They will then provide you with a application or a link to that WeBloom's website, which is the work-based online learning management system. And then you'll be able to apply once the application period opens. If you are awarded funding, you will be notified via email and sent a request to schedule a time to meet with your BSR, who will then review your training plan with you, the reimbursement process, refresh you on that. I know, probably not going to remember all this from the presentation. So they'll refresh you on all the rules and requirements, have you sign that training agreement, and then let you know when you can actually start your training. If you do apply and do not get awarded, don't worry, you can apply again in cycle 2, which will be offered in the spring of 2024. They do not have any dates for that yet. You, the employer, may only apply also in cycle 1 if you plan on completing your FY23 application if you have that open. You may apply in cycle 2 also if you were not awarded, or if you decide that cycle 1 is not going to work well for you or your company to get your training plan and everything in order for January, you decide you want to hold off to the spring, you're allowed to do that as well. And as I mentioned, that tentative application period is October 9th to October 27th, with the training starting January 1.